This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is February 13th, 2023. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. You got anything romantical going on? What's up?
The day of love. I don't know. My in-laws offered to keep the kids for maybe. I don't know. Valentine's Day, not really high on my priority list, to be honest. Man,
what a bummer. You're not into the day of love?
No, every day is the day of love. Maybe.
Oh, okay. All right. What's going on in the Luke Sylvia house? All right. Well, folks, we have a very fun and interesting episode going on here. Recapping some games from this last week. Recapping some fun things that happened this week. Obviously, the trade deadline is now come and gone. But something that we felt the need to take a couple of minutes to talk about at the top of the show here. Terrence Ross, who was not moved necessarily before the trade deadline, the writing was kind of on the wall that most likely was headed for some kind of buyout situation. And it was reported that was going to be likely, I believe, originally by Adrian Wojnarowski, if I'm not mistaken. Kobe Price has confirmed those reports. It seemed like Dallas was a front runner if he was going to receive a buyout from the Magic. Now it seems like it's going to be Phoenix. But Terrence Ross has been officially waived, but I'm sure it was via a buyout with Terrence Ross. But yeah, after 7 seasons, Terrence Ross is no longer an Orlando Magic. It feels weird that we don't have like one of those, like he's no longer a Nick or no longer we just have to say he's no longer a Magic. Is that how we would say it, Luke?
I think so. I think technically speaking, that's how you would say it. It's disappointing, right? But I think everybody is of the same understanding that it was time. This has been something that's been rumored for years at this point, his departure. So, I remember him re-signing to the last contract that he did with the Magic a few years ago, and I was ecstatic about it. There's nothing I wanted more than Terrence Ross back on the team. So to see him,
do you remember him wearing all the Magic gear that summer, like before free agency?
Yes. Yeah, he loved it. So I'm. It stinks. It's part of the whole business of basketball, and at this point, you just hope that Terrence can go win a ring. Obviously, Phoenix being the seeming landing spot there.
I remember he did an Instagram live like not long after it was announced that he was re-signing with the Magic, and he's in the car with his wife. I know TT, his son Tristan, was in the back seat of the car. I don't know if his daughter was born yet. I don't remember now. But I remember him saying, man, Orlando forever. He's like, at least that's how it feels. And he was like super excited to come back. We're fresh off of that 2018-2019 playoff run. And, Terrence, the 18-19 season was like incredible, right? Like, by all accounts, like a career year for him. And his role on this team changed over the course of the last couple of years when the team kind of shifted directions. But what was just so endearing to me, at least, about Terrence is that he liked being here. He wanted to be here, and how like open he always was, like talking to the media, like talking with fans, like he was going to tell you what was on his mind. Obviously, a very exciting and dynamic offensive player to watch. The dunks, obviously could change a game with his 3-point shooting. But what I will remember most about Terrence is not his play, but just kind of the way that he conducted himself in the media, just kind of the love and support that he showed us and like showed the show, which we kind of had like this cool relationship with Terrence. And I don't think that's going to end. Like I know you and I are still going to be big Terrence Ross fans. I know we speak for most Magic fans when we say we want him to succeed in his next chapter, and I'll be rooting for the Suns in the playoffs for sure. It seems like he liked some tweet saying like "Welcome to the Valley" or something like that. So it seems official. That's where he's going. But it's one of those things where like we had that tribute video sitting in our drafts for since last trade deadline because we thought it was going to be then, and the photo of him laying on the ground like throwing up the peace sign, like I've had that sitting in my photos on my phone for like a year because I knew that this was coming at some point. But it doesn't, to me, Luke, it doesn't make it any easier. It's still like, even if you expect these guys to be gone, all of a sudden they're not, and you're like, wow, that guy like isn't a part of my everyday life anymore. And it's kind of weird. It's sad.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's something that you see we've seen it be out there for years at this point, that it could come to that part where Terrence is no longer part of the organization. Yeah, it was weird. Being in attendance for that game against the Heat and not seeing Terrence anywhere. Like even if he would have gotten a DNP, you still could see him on the bench. And I think that's what I appreciate the most, is that I don't know that I ever thought of Terrence as like a very vocal leader on this team, a vocal veteran. We've talked about that, but he still is a good person to have in terms of your team chemistry. He's never going to ruffle any feathers. You never have to worry about Terrence. And coming down the stretch where he is just racking up DMPs, knowing, kind of writing on the wall, you could still look at the bench and the bench reactions, and Terrence is still the one standing up, clapping, cheering, like knowing that he's probably on his way out the door, but he loves this team. And I think that like that's something you can't fake. And Terrence did such a great job this year, just like maintaining composure and just a leadership that maybe we didn't see last year. Last year, it felt like there was sort of a distancing that he had made for himself, and maybe not from the team, but from his play, just knowing that it was over. And he's alluded to this. This isn't news, but, this year was just totally different. And I think it says a lot about the future of this team that Terrence was still invested, knowing he was on his way out. But I'm sure to some extent he wishes he could stick around, because I don't know that a championship was necessarily on Terrence's mind. Like he said, like Orlando forever in that last one he re-signed, right? Like it doesn't scream to me a guy that's going to ring chase, at least not at that time. And now he's done his time on subpar teams. I'm like, man, I hope that you were able to go secure that ring this year, because next year and the years to come, it's ours, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to talk about, the Mo Bamba deal as well as we talk about the trade deadline, but it's like Mo is another guy that we just had guessed, the last couple of weeks, like the writing was on the wall, and then all of a sudden, like you see the Instagram post from Mo and you're like, oh man, like this is for real. Like this is a dude who we've rooted for the last 5 years, and we're going to root for him in a different kind of way now, not as part of our team, but it's like this guy is here for so long, and then it just, we talk about this, I feel like every trade deadline, it just reminds you that these are people, these are human beings playing this game. Like you work with a group of people for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden your employer's like, hey, you've been traded, you work for this other company now, and you're just like gone. And not only are you working for another company, but you're potentially moving across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And for Mo and for Terrence, who have like really planted roots here in Orlando, that's not a move that can be made quickly. Like Terrence built a home here a couple of years ago. I know that he's talked about that when he retires, he's going to live in Orlando. I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure for the rest of his career, he's going to want to be with his family. So if he signs a long-term deal in Phoenix or wherever it is after this year, like he's going to have to uproot his family and move them to wherever he's playing for the next few years until his playing career is up. So we haven't gotten like the mushy sentimental post from Terrence just yet. He posted to his story a few hours ago. He posted like a tribute video that the Magic posted, and he said, "Don't worry, like a post is coming soon." Like basically, like, hey, I've got a lot going on right now, but he made it a point to say he is going to be making a post about the Magic. And I went back. I think he's like scrubbed his Instagram at some point a few years ago because his Instagram photos they don't go back that far in time. But I went through his Twitter, and I don't think he like had like any kind of like thank you Toronto like tweet when he left. Now he played 4.5 seasons in Toronto and 6.5 seasons here in Orlando. And you start to think about like when a player retires, like how are people going to remember that player? Like you think about Kobe, you think about the Lakers, you think about Dirk, like you think about the Mavs. And most players, I think when you picture a retired player, you picture them in like a certain uniform. And I was thinking like, how are people going to remember Terrence Ross? And I do think for the large majority of people, it will be as a player for the Magic. And nicknames with these guys, it's a big deal. It's like an iconic thing. Like 20 years from now, people are going to be talking about like Terrence Ross. Like, oh, you remember the Human Torch, Terrence Ross? Like that nickname, he got that nickname in Orlando, and I think that is something that's always going to be super special. So maybe we'll post some kind of like clip from this to Instagram. So Terrence, I know that we've already told you kind of how we feel, but we're gonna miss you, man. We wish you the best of luck in Phoenix. Go win a ring, man. Nothing would make us happier this season than to see you win a championship. You definitely deserve it, man. Wish nothing but the best for you and your family. And it's not goodbye; it's see you later. And we're gonna give you all the business next time we see you. So just be ready for that. But we love you, Terrence, and we're gonna miss you, Torch. It sucks, Luke. You root for these guys, and then all of a sudden one day you're like, you're not on my team anymore. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially as close as we are to the team. It's definitely kind of weird. Anything else that you want to say on Terrence?
No, man. I hope he wins that ring.
I feel that. I wanted to talk about our watch party coming up in a few weeks here. So another watch party coming up March. I'm jumping ahead on the calendar here. March 3rd. We're going to be at Burton's, which is located at 801 East Washington Street when the Magic take on the Charlotte Hornets. We'll be there at 6:30, so make sure that you guys come out. Circle that on your calendar. Going to be a good time again. March 3rd, 6:30 at Burton's, 801 East Washington. Watch the Magic take on the Charlotte Hornets. And I wanted to shout out Duvin. So I'm rocking the Duvin gear here. This one I purchased. They did not send this to me. Myself and producer Kevin Tucker, we went to the Duvin launch party at the Heavy on Friday night. When I got there about 3:30, and I want to say there was like 50 or 60 people in the parking lot, Luke. And I left there about an hour and 30 minutes later, and there were hundreds of people in the parking lot. There was like two lines, like it was like wrapping around and went all the way down to the block, all the way down to the corner of Harmon Ave. And I know people sat in that line for hours. I think they like sold out of all the inventory they had at the Heavy, went and got more inventory, brought that back, sold out of that as well. There are people that I saw on Reddit commenting saying, I sat in line for 2 hours and then found out they were sold out. So getting to see all of the Duvin line, just incredible. They do a great job over there. They did a fantastic job setting up that event. I didn't get to see any of the stuff that they were doing at Amway. Did you see any of that? I know you were at the game on Friday. What was that setup like? I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, so that the shop that is there right off after you get off, they come off of the bridge from the Geico. That little shop that they have right there as you enter. They had it basically. They had the Duvin line, lined up there for people to get. So yeah, it was out there. So if you guys weren't able to, if you did stay in line for 2 hours, I hope that you guys went to the Heat game and were able to get what you wanted from that drop. Because, like you said, a lot of sick stuff. I like that shirt.
I got this shirt. I had to get they had like this cream colored shirt that it has like a similar logo to this on the front, I think, but with like the blue and like the neon green and the neon, like the hot pink. And then on the back, it had stuff water skiing.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I absolutely need that shirt. And then they have this other shirt. It said, like, greetings from Orlando. And I think it's got like a big basketball and like palm trees on it. I'm like, well, that's dope also. So I had to grab all of those. So, but it was just a great event. Like, Duvin knows how to put on an event. The line is amazing. If you got yours, I'm sure you're super happy with it. All of the stuff that I got, I didn't really know that much about Duvin before this. Like, I think a lot of people might have had that experience, but I'm impressed with just how like high quality like everything is from them. So I'll be wearing this stuff for the rest of my life. All I wear is Orlando Magic and anime stuff. So you will see me. I'll be that 70-year-old dude at Publix smelling like he hasn't showered in a few days, still wearing this same shirt, baby. When you see me 50 years from now, make sure you say what's up. And the last thing that I want to say about the Duvin event, which again was fantastic, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our listeners, but I want to share the story because it kind of shows why the 6-man show exists. So first, Kevin and I were standing in line to a new listener actually named Neil. Neil was super nice to meet you, and it was great talking to you. And Neil kind of shared his story with Kevin and I about how he stumbled onto the show as he was watching ESPN a couple of weeks ago, and they weren't talking about the Magic. And he's like, what is this garbage? Like, there has to be like actual Magic content out there. And he started looking for an Orlando Magic podcast, and he came across the 6-man show. And Kevin and I were telling him, like, that's exactly why we exist, because forever there hasn't been enough coverage about the Magic. And as the Magic continue to improve, there is going to be more national coverage of the Magic, but these guys don't watch this team and they don't care about this team the way that you guys do, the way that we do. So that is very much why we exist. But again, just want to give Neil a quick shout out, man. It was really cool meeting you, and it was cool meeting everybody at the Duvin launch party and at the game this weekend. If you came and said, what's up, appreciate that. And if you ever see us anywhere, please come up and say hello to us. Like, we want to meet you guys. We want to make those connections, and we want to hear your stories. So, again, big shout out to Neil, shout out to Duvin. Just a great event. All right, let's get into the state of the Magic, Luke. The Magic went 1-2 on this week, bringing them to a record of 23-34. They are still the 5th worst record in the league. They are 13th in the Eastern Conference. Pulling up the standings right now, Luke, they are 3.5 games back of the Toronto Raptors, 3.5 games back of the Chicago Bulls. They are a game and a half back of the Indiana Pacers. The Raptors are 10th place in the Eastern Conference right now, that final play-in spot. Right behind them, the Chicago Bulls. Right behind them, the Indiana Pacers. So our next 3 opponents, as a matter of fact, or 3 out of our next 4 opponents, as a matter of fact, Toronto, Chicago, and the Indiana Pacers. Throwing the Detroit Pistons in there as well after the All-Star break. But next couple of weeks here, the Magic have an opportunity to make up some real ground in the lower part of the Eastern Conference as they're continuing to make that play-in push. On the season, the Magic have an offensive rating of 111.4, rather, which ranks 25th in the league. They have a defensive rating of 114.1, which ranks 21st in the league. Overall net rating is negative 2.7, which is 25th in the league. Luke, for the first time in 3.5 years, I believe, the Magic have a clean injury report as Chuma Okeke is set to return on Monday versus the Chicago Bulls. Kobe Price reporting that. And then I know we're going to talk about the trade deadline recap, but this didn't really have to do with the NBA trade deadline. It seemed like it was more like G League. But the Lakeland Magic have acquired DJ Wilson from the OKC Blue. The reason that I felt that this was notable, Philip Rossman Reich tweeted this out, but he was Milwaukee's 2017 first-round pick, also played at Michigan. So obviously we have a lot of Michigan guys on the roster. Trading for a former first-round pick when the Magic are going to have some open roster spots, it just kind of raises your eyebrows a little bit. Maybe the Magic are going to try to sign DJ Wilson to the Orlando Magic roster. purely just speculation at this point. We'll have to kind of keep our eyes on that. Let's talk about the trade deadline, Luke. Really, the only move that the Magic made at the trade deadline was being involved in a 4-team trade between Orlando, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Denver Nuggets. The Magic traded Mo Bamba to the Los Angeles Lakers, received Patrick Beverley cash considerations from the Lakers, and then they received a 2024 second-round pick from Denver, helping facilitate the trade that also moved Bones Highland to the Clippers, moving Thomas Bryant from the Lakers to the Nuggets. Sorry, a lot of moving parts in this trade here. Trying to make sure that I get everything right here. As soon as the trade came for Mo, it was like, whoa, like, all right, this is actually happening. We suspected this to happen. But Luke, what was your initial reaction to the trade before we heard like some of the other information that came after?
Well, the first thing that happens is like Patrick Beverley. He's not someone that is a star in this league, as we know, but he is a guy that'll raise some eyebrows in general to have him on your team. And so to see him actually to be involved in a trade like that was interesting. But I think that, it doesn't take much and this is what irritated me the most about just around deadline time in general. Nobody looks at contracts. They just look at names and stats. And it's like, if you just look up Patrick Beverley's contract, he's expiring. This guy is not going to be someone that probably, at this time, even you're thinking, or you probably were thinking, either A, this guy's not going to be on this team past the end of the season, or B, he doesn't want to be in Orlando. Like he doesn't want to be on a team that's like still trying to find their identity and all that stuff. Like Pat Bev wants to be on a team that is, going to be locked in for sure to the playoffs. So we'll see what happens with Pat Bev along the way. But that was just kind of my immediate thinking was I wasn't shocked. We talked about Mo Bamba being the possibility of him being dealt. And, I think that we'll see what happens with him, but it wasn't anything that I was upset about, or I saw a lot of people freaking out about it just in general. And I don't really understand why, but yeah, man, it is what it is. Writing's on the wall for him too. Getting DMPs, low minutes, you're clearing salary. That's all this move was.
Well, God had a really good tweet for this where people like the night before are like going to bed saying like trade Bamba for dog crap. And then they wake up and they're like, what do you mean we traded Bamba for dog crap? Like people were saying like get Mo Bamba off my team like by any means necessary. And then you're mad when he's essentially traded for a second round pick and cash. As soon as I saw the deal come across, I was like, well, Patrick Beverley doesn't make a ton of sense for this team. He's not playing over Markelle. He's not playing over Gary. He's not playing over Cole. He's not playing over Jalen Suggs. Like, kind of where does he fit? So I kind of figured that he was going to be headed for a buyout, which not too long after the deal was announced, Woj was saying that, I don't know if it was Woj or Shams, those guys going back and forth on the trade deadline day was pretty crazy. Although recently I was like, okay, Shams is kind of showing Woj up, and like Woj was like, the Michael Jordan meme, like I took that personally and went kind of crazy on trade deadline day. Yeah. But it was he's not likely to, or maybe it was Kobe Price. I might be dissing our boy Kobe. I think Kobe might have reported first that it wasn't likely that Pat Bev was going to play for the Magic.
Yeah.
So now that has been made official. The Magic have announced that they are waiving Patrick Beverley, officially have announced that they're waiving Terrence Ross, and Kobe Price reporting today, Super Bowl Sunday, that the Magic are kind of exploring. I don't have the direct report up right now from Kobe, but they're kind of exploring potentially waiving RJ Hampton to allow either waiving him or buying him out to help facilitate a move somewhere else where he can get more of an opportunity and get more playing time, which to that I say, like, I would be happy for RJ. As much as I don't want to lose RJ, like I wish John and Jeff would wake up and be like, hey, like we're actually going to like try to keep this kid this offseason. I don't know how you would even find him minutes at this point, but he was playing really well at the beginning of the season. I think there is still a lot there with RJ, and I just hope that he does get an opportunity somewhere to prove himself and carve out a real role, because I think he is a legitimate role player in the NBA.
Yeah, and based on what I've heard, it it would make sense if RJ just goes to another team that's basically rebuilding, trying to get their feet under them, develop young guys like himself. I just really hope it's not like the Rockets or something. Like, don't send him there. It's dysfunctional. It is way different than what he's probably used to in Orlando as far as like culture. I can't imagine it's good over there. And John Wall talked about it, and poor John Wall got traded to Houston.
Poor John Wall. I mean, it's kind of karma.
Yeah. So we'll see. But if you guys have heard what John Wall said about Houston and those young guys, they don't seem pleasant to work with, to play with. So I hope RJ gets put anywhere but there, truthfully. And I hope he gets it soon.
Well, I mean, luckily, like, he'll kind of have like a decision of where he wants to go. Now, how much
That's
interest
true.
there is around the league, I don't know. I think there should be some interest. I know maybe not a contender, but any team that is looking to upgrade like their bench guards, RJ Hampton can very much be that for you, and I think will develop into more than that. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all, 3-4 years, like, he is a backup guard on like a playoff team, like contributing in a real way. So again, let's talk about Mo, I guess, for a minute here, because again, they take this kid, with the was he the fifth overall pick? And it just didn't work out, fifth or sixth overall pick. I don't remember off the top of my head. And it was the 2018 draft, but
Six.
the sixth pick. There we go. I
Yep.
knew it was fifth or sixth. So JI was the fifth pick. I kind of always mix those two up, but it just didn't work out. We were frustrated for years with Clifford here, because it was like, this kid isn't really getting a real shot to prove whether or not he can play in this league. And I think now we're like, okay, well, Steve Clifford saw this. Like, Steve Clifford knew what Mo Bamba was, like, to his credit. But to Jamal Mosley's credit, like, Jamal Mosley gave him every opportunity. He started most of last season, gave him every opportunity to prove that he could be a starter in this league. And it just really never came to fruition for Mo. So although it was a miss of a draft pick, that's kind of a demerit on John and Jeff's managerial record now. And now we've moved on from Mo Bamba. It's another one of those things where it's sad, because say what you want about Mo Bamba, the basketball player, Mo Bamba is a S-tier human being. Like, Mo Bamba is a phenomenal teammate, a phenomenal human being, regardless of the circumstance, and maybe some frustration that would have been understandable. He always said the right thing for his entire tenure here, and he's a guy that I will root for to have more success elsewhere. And we'll always be a big Mo Bamba fan, because he's a fantastic kid. All right, let's go ahead and shout out our patrons. So those folks that help financially support the show. So first of all, if you haven't heard before, we do have a Patreon community. You can join us at patreon.com/the Sixth Man Show. For $2 a month, you can help support the show, plus some other tiers with other benefits. Each episode, we shout out our brand new patrons whenever we have them. We have 3 new patrons this episode, Luke. So a big shout out to Phantom Wolf 72 for joining our elite tier. Shout out to Irish Magic Mike. I'm very interested, and I almost don't want to ask how you got that nickname. But Irish Magic Mike doing a little Irish jig, he joined our Hall of Fame tier. And then shout out to Austin Lampy, who joined our elite tier at the annual level, just went the entire year. Austin hit me up the day of the Duvin launch. He's like, listen, man, I can't make it to the launch party. He's like, but I need one of those striped polo shirts. He's like, if you can cop that for me and ship it to me, he's like, I'll send you the money and I'll throw you guys a Patreon subscription. Didn't say it was going to be elite. Didn't say it was going to be. I think he did say for the full year. I think he did mention that when he messaged me. But I was like, I cannot turn that down. So big shout out to Austin. Really, really appreciate that. Try to get that to you in the mail as soon as possible. You see boxes behind me. I'm still unpacking my life here, but I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. So big shout out again, Phantom Wolf 72, Irish Magic Mike, crazy name. You're wild for that. And then Austin Lampy, a big shout out to our brand new patrons. And each episode, we shout out all of our Hall of Fame tier patrons and our elite tier patrons. So we'll start with Court Cousins, Armin, Carson Tulo, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Julio, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapon, The Distract, Donkey Punch Dave. Wow. It's not OKK to say Okiki. Pierre A, Migzors, Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Lil Penny, Eduardo Sanchez, Drum, Danimal, Dutto 15, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Geraldo, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Hosea Squealan, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, Joe Rothfuss, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Freakin, Shahin 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo, Ban Himro, RM Prof 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Let's Spank Don't Tank, Soft Taco, Jesse, Barry M, Johnny B, Fuego Nando, Phantom Wolf 72, Irish Magic Mike, and Austin Lampy. A big shout out to all of our patrons. You can find us at patreon.com/the Six Man Show. I think we're going to have to start like speeding that up like 1.5 speed when I read through that. Like when you hear these guys do like the like gambling ads and they have to read through all of those, like all 52 states gambling hotline numbers. And it's like, call 1-877-452 if you live in Alabama. We might have to start doing that because the list is getting crazy. We really appreciate the support, y'all. But that line is the list is getting pretty wild. Luke, let's talk about this Nuggets game. Aaron Gordon, 37 points, 15 for 21. Nikola Jokic, 29 and 12. It looked like the Aaron Gordon game, like the Aaron Gordon revenge game. And to that, I say, why revenge? You wanted the trade, buddy. Like, let's just kind of chill, Luke. But what did you think about this game against the Nuggets, the fat old W?
It's a fat W, man. It's beautiful. It is not one that I saw coming, especially after the Knicks game. But as is usually the case with this team, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably going to happen. So this didn't make sense that the Magic would do this. It didn't make sense that Aaron Gordon would drop 37 points in this game and they would still lose. There's a lot to take from this game. The Magic obviously starting out the game down 12-0, shooting 63% for the rest of the half at 27 for 43. You're up 16. They cut it to 10 at half. There's just some weird stuff happening in this game. The Magic showed a ton of effort on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the first half. They asked Michael Malone about it, basically like the message at halftime, and he said the message was simple at halftime. We're not playing hard enough. We're not playing physical enough. They're outworking us. They're diving on the floor for loose balls, and we're bending over trying to pick them up. So that really encompasses what the difference was between the Magic and the Nuggets. The Nuggets rolled in as, the best team in the West? And they rolled in like we're the fifth worst team in the league. And that's only on a record surface, folks. We're not the fifth worst team in the league. But the Denver Nuggets kind of walked into it, besides Aaron Gordon. Also, in like looking over everything, AG and Jokic scored all 29 points for Denver in the third quarter. That was a wild stat to me. AG had 17, Jokic had 12. They got within 3. And, you see it, Cole and Bull lead the unit there down the stretch. The Magic extend to 18, 19 point lead at one point. It's just a really impressive win. There's no other way to cut it. Denver gave them their best shot when they started to take them seriously, and the Magic were able to still push them out to arm's length again. They were super, super, super impressive in this game.
For a team that is 23 and 34 now, I have this like irrational level of confidence watching this team play. Like, so the last time that you played Denver in Denver, you lose on that 3 at the end of the game to Jokic. And like the first quarter, you go down 12-0 and you're like, oh no, like they recognized that last time they kind of played around with their food, kind of messed around and found out, had to have a big shot from Jokic to win that game. And now they're just going to come out and try to murder us. But in the midst of that, you go down 12-0, you immediately start playing better it was like a 22-point swing. Like you mentioned, you're down 12 and then you're up 10 at the half. And in the middle of that, I was just like, I feel like really good about our odds of still making this a game. And credit to Jamal Mosley. Like we've talked about this for the entirety of the last season, and we're basically 3/4 through the way of this one, which is insane to think about. But regardless of circumstance, regardless of deficit, this team always plays incredibly hard. You're always very confident in the fact that they are going to play themselves back into the game. And once the Magic took the lead, like I never really felt like this game was in danger. Like I always was very confident throughout the second half that the Magic were going to find a way to hold on and win this game. And that's exactly what they did, in large part, again, due to the performance of the second unit. The starters were not all that great in this game outside of Wendell Carter. Jalen Suggs had a decent game. When you go through the plus minus for the Magic, Cole Anthony in 24 minutes, plus 19. Caleb Houston in 16 minutes, plus 19. Mo Wagner in 19 minutes, plus 18. Bol in 15 minutes, plus 16. Like the bench unit was nothing short of fantastic. That was the story for me in the game. And Bol just loves playing the Denver Nuggets. 17 points, 3 rebounds, a block, 8 of 11, good for 72% from the floor. And Cole Anthony, 17 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks, like almost messed around and flirted with a triple-double, 57% for the game. Like the bench is just kind of continuing this trend. I know we're going to talk about the Heat game in a minute where, again, like kind of this trend that's been going on for several weeks now of the starters not playing all that great, but not like playing you necessarily like out of the game. And like the bench just continues to play really, really well. Magic took great care of the ball. 10 turnovers, shot 48% from the floor. Pretty good for the Magic. Free throw shooting, kind of a concern as of late. 12 of 19 in this game, 63%. But 15 offensive rebounds, really big for the Magic as well. Denver came to town, and apart from the first few minutes of the game where the Magic got down big, as soon as they came back and took the lead, the Magic outplayed Denver for the rest of this game. And it was really encouraging to see because Denver is a team that has title aspirations, and they knew from just a couple of weeks ago that this is not a team that you can take lightly, especially on their home floor. So I don't want to hear like, oh, they came in and it was a trap game or any of that nonsense. Like, no, like they knew what they were getting into. Teams now know the Magic are not a team that you want to play on any given night. Like they're a hard-nosed, scrappy team. Like they're going to find a way to keep it close or to make it interesting at some point. And just hats off to the Magic. Like this was a awesome win.
Yeah. You also, I want to point out real quick, like you shoot 13 more shots than the Denver Nuggets. You also have 15 rebounds, offensive rebounds to their 7. So it was just glaring where the Magic were able to excel in this one. And obviously those extra shots come from causing those turnovers and also limiting your own. I just, like I said, already reiterating as well, like blew my mind really how great this team played.
Yeah, they were awesome. All right, let's talk about a game that was super fun and then it like totally wasn't at the end. Let's talk about this Miami Heat game. So you and I were both in attendance for this one. From like the opening tip, you heard, even before the opening tip, when the Heat came onto the floor for warm-ups, you heard the Miami Heat fans in Amway, which just like my blood started to boil before this game even started, just because it just sucks. Like I understand why it is the way that it is, but it doesn't make it any easier for me when like my least favorite basketball team is playing my favorite basketball team, and there are fans in my favorite basketball team's building cheering for their team more than home teams are cheering for my team. I know that's a very kind of convoluted way to say that, but it just sucks. It's annoying, and it's very frustrating. Now, like from the jump of this game, the Magic were all over the Miami Heat, especially like in the first half, getting up to a 17-point lead. And up until the final couple of minutes of the first half, I'm like, boy, if we can blow these dudes out and get these fans out of the game in the second half, and we have a big win over the Miami Heat, this is going to be a fantastic night. Now, the last few minutes of that first half don't really go the Magic's way. And instead of having like a 13, 15-point lead at the half, the lead is just 8. The Miami Heat shot 35% from the floor in that first half. They had 9 first half turnovers, and somehow the Magic only have an 8-point lead. They shot 14 free throws, so defending without fouling. I mean, we're going to talk about the officiating in this game because I don't care who you ask. It very much was a factor. And then, the second half, Magic shoot 38% from the floor, 3 of 11 from the three-point line, miss 4 free throws, and turn the ball over 8 times. Magic going to overtime, and again, just not able to capitalize, not able to make shots. You end up losing this game 107-103. Officiating was questionable throughout this game, but I felt especially in the second half is when it was like egregious, where our guys were getting mauled. You would breathe on Jimmy Butler and the whistle is blowing. Jimmy Butler, I don't know that if he does this on a regular basis, but he would be bringing the ball up the floor and literally just like toppling over into our guys. No whistle. Like what should be an offensive foul for just like careening into a guy who is just like, has every right to his spot on the floor as Jimmy Butler does. It's like throwing himself into these guys, trying to draw a whistle. It's like, what are you even doing in the first place, Jimmy? But like the refs you suck chants on Twitter, it wasn't a couple of tweets. It wasn't a lot of tweets. It was every tweet from Magic fans was just about how terrible the officiating was. And it was terrible, Luke. To me, it was the worst officiated game that I've seen this season, but I don't think it tells the whole story on why the Magic lost this game.
No. This game was super frustrating, man. This game was super frustrating because it continues that trend of like the starters are putting, some games in jeopardy. And that's the case in this game as well. From an efficiency standpoint, right? Like your 2 best players, Paolo and Franz, shoot 10 of 31 from the field, 0 of 8 from 3. Paolo only gets to the line to shoot 4 free throws, which is way different than the normal 8 that we're used to. And it was just a frustrating thing all around. There was a lot that went on in this game that, you you wish you could get back. Jalen Suggs is just incredible in this one. And that's what really sucks about losing it. You hate when a guy has a momentum type of game that can just continue to snowball. And it still might, right? Like Jalen Suggs seems to be figuring it out. He's somehow gotten even better defensively, that like we've talked about. But it's ridiculous. But yeah, man, you go up 10 and then you only score 6 points in the final 6 minutes and 40 seconds of the game, or of regulation, I should say. And then come overtime. I mean, I turned to my buddy when we're quite obviously about to go to overtime, and I'm like, yeah, this is over. There's no part of me that thinks that we win this game. And that's just because anytime you're playing just a more talented team, they have the guys that they have on their roster, they have the experience that they have. You go to overtime as a young team like us, who had this lead, like had such a big lead in this game, you just writing's on the wall for your team in overtime. And that's the case. What Miami jumps out to like a 5 or 6 point start in overtime. Jalen Suggs is nowhere to be seen. And, a lot of times, Mosley was asked by Fazan, who works with us, represents the show. He asked him
Did a great
essentially.
job, by the way. Flew in
He
from
did.
Dallas to cover this game, and
Yeah.
it was awesome to hang out with him. But yeah, did a great
He
job in his
he
kind of
did.
first game covering the team.
And that's what I said to you guys as well. And I texted him and said the same thing. Was like, for a kid I say because he's 19. For a kid that this is his first time covering as a credentialed media member, especially for for this organization, to come in and ask a question like he did in the post game presser, I was super proud of him. And he did the same thing with Markel, like challenge and bring up hard things that people maybe don't want to ask, but everybody's thinking it. And so he did a great job at that. Anyway, he asked Mosley essentially, why didn't you go to the guys down the stretch? The starters, I should say. And Mosley gave much the same answer that he did when he played the bench for 15 straight minutes, a few games back, whenever that was, to close the game out, basically saying the momentum was there. They had a groove, and I didn't want to mess it up. Is basically what it boiled down to. But then he was asked about Jalen Suggs and where was he in overtime, and he said something to the effect of, I've got to go back and look at the film and see like when maybe we should have, or something like that. It wasn't Jalen wasn't, because you couldn't say Jalen wasn't giving you momentum. He couldn't say that. That wasn't an answer he could even say. And so you knew that he knew, man, hindsight's 2020, but I should have gone to Jalen. And that was the case. So you're getting a game from Jalen where he's not only playing well defensively, like he's playing well offensively, he's making the right decisions. Everything seems to be going well. So I'm frustrating all around, from the refs to the substitutions to Paolo and Franz not playing well. It was it sucked. I just want to see both units in rhythm at the same time, and we just haven't gotten to see it. Something's got to change. I don't know if Jalen goes in the starting lineup and stays there, and Gary goes to the bench. I don't know what it is, but it might have to happen. Something has to change.
Interesting that you say that. I don't hate it. I don't know that I'm ready to be like, yeah, let's start Jalen, because Gary hasn't like lit it up the last couple of games, and Jalen has played well the last couple. I don't know that I'm ready to do all that. But to Mosley's, maybe not credit, but like in his defense, Jalen played like a really long stretch to end the third and to start the fourth. Like I feel like he played like 13, 14 straight minutes. So like Jalen very much needed a breather, but it did feel like he should have been in the overtime period.
That's what I'm saying though, right? Like you can't also use the reasoning of like they played 15 straight minutes because they had a groove.
They weren't really like in the first half, like sure, like that second unit was awesome. They weren't that awesome in the second half. Nobody was that awesome for us in the second half.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that you can't use that like line about momentum and then say like anything about like anything other than, you're right, like I should have had Jalen in the game. The dude had momentum. He played that long stretch. You give him the breather, let him play in overtime. I'm walking out with my friend from the game who doesn't pay too much attention to the NBA, but knows a lot about basketball in general, just fundamentally and whatever. And he was like, all I found out tonight was that Jalen Suggs needs a bigger role. And I was like, to some extent, but that offensive, like the way he was showing out on offense is not always the case. But maybe it can be. Maybe it can be. I don't know, man. And I love Gary Harris, but the thought of he needs to shoot more, there needs to be more volume, is absolutely the truth. And I don't know if that's scheme or him, but it does, like, I need more from him. Like, he's great defending, and that's why he was able to be on the floor in overtime, but Jalen's just such a better defender.
And it's crazy to say that because Gary is like a very good defender.
Yeah, I love
Jalen is
Gary
a
as a
demon.
defender, but Jalen's nuts. Like he is absolutely. And we've said this so many
It's
times.
like special,
Do
special.
do we just go ahead and say it? He's an elite perimeter defender. I've been using the verbiage like he's
Some of us
approaching that
have been
territory.
saying it.
You have, but I've just been scared to say it. But maybe it's a good moment for me. I have been saying that he is approaching that level. I think he's an elite perimeter defender in the NBA. If his offensive game comes along, and it might be a big if, I don't know, but you see flashes and you're like, man, if we can get just like bottle that performance up and get just some of that every game from him, he's had great moments. That game offensively, obviously hitting the big shot against Chicago, that's a big ball shot. That you don't get that unless you're confident. Jalen's got the tools to do it. I don't know, man. A conversation is going to start soon, if it isn't already, about him getting back into that starting lineup.
Back to the point about the rotations, there's a foul at the 8:39 mark. The Magic are up 84-79. Jalen Suggs going to the free throw line. And I'm saying now is the time. Like, Miami is closing the gap. You feel the momentum swaying. And I'm saying I don't care how many minutes they've played up to this point. Miami is on the second night of a back-to-back. Tyler Hero is still out there. Bam Adebayo is still out there. Gabe Vincent is still out there. Now is the time to go back to your starters. Like, all you need to do is extend the lead a little bit, put the pressure on these guys, and get them to gas out. And that point never really came. And then he decides to bring the starters back in. It's still a 5-point game, but 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. And now I'm like, all right, you're asking these guys to come in. They haven't played for like what felt like 20 minutes. Like, Paolo gets on the floor and like starts running suicides to warm himself up. That's how, when I saw that, I'm like, that is how you know a guy has been sitting too long. When he's just extracurricularly running around the floor to try to get his legs going again. That's not a good sign. Now, the Magic had a 9-point lead, 95-86, with 2 minutes and 34 seconds to go in this game off of a Markelle Fultz elbow jumper. You need to win that game every single time. Up 9, 2.5 minutes to go. Like, I felt like they were rushing like unnecessarily when they should have been killing clock down the stretch. But people want to talk about the refs all they want, and there were egregious missed calls down the stretch. But Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero especially, missed bunny after bunny, gimme after gimme in this game. And if you get anything resembling an average performance from those guys, the Magic win this game in regulation. And I think that is kind of where I want to take the conversation now. I'm also going to use it as an opportunity to throw in some Jalen Suggs propaganda. So I'm looking at the last 10 games for the Orlando Magic. First of all, Jalen Suggs in the last 10 games is shooting 47% from the floor. He's shooting 46% from the three-point line on almost 3 attempts per game, while averaging almost 3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and almost 2 steals a game. So Jalen Suggs playing well as of lately. This to me is incredibly, I don't want to say concerning, but it just cannot happen if the Magic want to win games. In the last 10 games, Franz Wagner is scoring 13 points per game, 42% from the floor, 31% from the three-point line, shooting 66% from the free throw line. Paolo Banchero in the last 10 games, averaging 16.9 points per game, shooting 34% from the floor, 16% from the three-point line, 72% from the free throw line. Franz Wagner is our 5th leading scorer over the last 10 games. It's Paolo at 16.9, Wendell at 14.7, Markelle at 13.7, Mo Wagner at 13.3, and then Franz at 13.2. Over the last 10 games, Moritz Wagner is giving us more on a nightly basis than Franz Wagner. That cannot happen. Now, I have a theory as to why that is, and I feel like we've been talking about it the last few episodes as we've talked about this approach up to the All-Star game. Paolo and Franz have been asked to do so much all season long, and they are running out of gas. I don't know if there are any two guys on this team that I'll go ahead and say it. There are no two guys on this team that need this for them is going to be like a 10-day break more than Franz and Paolo. So much so that if they came out and said they weren't playing in the Rising Stars game, I wouldn't even be mad. I would be disappointed that we don't get to see those guys on that stage. But if they were like, no, like we are trying to do something really special in these last 23 games after the All-Star break, so we're going to take an extra day to like rest and recover and, get our bodies right, I'd be like, okay, that is way more important for us. But like the Magic, I tweeted this last night, they are Franz and Paolo breaking out of these slumps away from making a real push at the play-in. I believe come back from the All-Star break, they'll be refreshed, they'll be ready to go for the last 23 games, and we're really going to get rocking here. But if they don't, the Magic have zero chance of making the play-in.
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret you need those guys. You've gotten this far because of those guys. And yeah, you allude to Mo Wagner and kind of giving you more on a production level than Franz Wagner, which is crazy. But he ripped off 10 straight points again last night. It just seems
he's
like that's
playing
a common
great.
thing.
Like I'm not trying to say like,
of course, but yeah, no. I mean, it still speaks to we expect Franz to be better than Mo, and even when Mo's playing well, so it's it's unfortunate right now. You hope that they find their legs again soon, but it's a young team. Those are young guys, and they've been shouldering a lot this season. So if the wheels fall off, they fall off, and if this is how it happens. But we'll see how it shakes out.
So we got a win on Thursday, no win on Saturday, unfortunately. But I hope on Friday you enjoy your Papa John's, folks. Don't forget, the day after every Magic victory, you can get 50% off your online order at papajohns.com with code MAGICWIN. Luke, looking ahead, only 2 games this week because we've got the All-Star break this weekend. On Monday, February 13th, the Magic are in Chicago to take on Nikola Vucevic and the Chicago Bulls. That game is going to tip off at 8 o'clock Eastern. And then you head to Toronto for a back-to-back on Tuesday. Good old Valentine's Day. You're going to face the Toronto Raptors. That game tips off at 7:30 p.m. And then most of these guys are going to have a nice long 11-day break. Paolo, Franz, not 11 days. What is that going to be like? 8 days, 9 days, whatever, because they're going to play Friday in the Rising Stars game. And then you come back, you got 23 games to fight for that play-in spot, Luke. So let's talk about that. But what do you think the Magic do the next couple of games here?
So we're looking at what through
just Monday and Tuesday. We're looking at Tuesday, Chicago, looking at Toronto.
I'm gonna say they split. I'm gonna say that you rebound and beat the Bulls. And I'm gonna say that the back-to-back gets you in Toronto and you lose that game.
So Chicago off tonight. They played Cleveland. They've lost 3 in a row to Memphis, Brooklyn, Cleveland. 3 quality teams. The Magic got the win over Chicago earlier in the year. Then a couple of weeks ago in Orlando, you were at that game. You basically get killed by the Bulls. Mm-hmm. Not a great time. Chicago, they didn't do really anything significant at the trade deadline, unless I'm forgetting. Now the Raptors, after all this talk about maybe moving OG Anunoby, maybe moving Fred VanVleet, they actually made a trade for Jakob Poeltl to really like shore up their center position. They shipped out our good old buddy Khem Birch. They played Detroit today. Actually, they played Detroit. They beat Detroit at home, 119-118. also lost to Utah on Friday, beat San Antonio last Wednesday. So they're 27-31. What did I say? 3.5 games ahead of us, I believe. I'm gonna say 1-1 also. I think you beat Chicago, lose to Toronto just because the second night of a back-to-back. But I'm gonna say like I'm like as close as you can get to saying 2-0 on the week. Like I really think the Magic are gonna beat Chicago and then probably just barely lose to Toronto. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Magic go 2-0. And we're talking about these standings. Like these are kind of two games that you have to have. Like the Heat game, it felt like you had to have that. It really did. Just kind of given the way other teams are performing lately, and 17-point lead at home, and then a 9-point lead with 2.5 minutes to go. Like you really needed to win that game. These two games, like you really need to win these games. Like I'm going to say you need to win both of these games. They're going to be really important to the play-in hopes. And if you miss the play-in, obviously there's going to be games that we can point to. Losing to Miami in overtime, losing to Sacramento in overtime, losing to Detroit first game of the year, losing to Denver on the the Jokic 3. Like there's going to be probably 8 or 9 games that you can point back to and be like, this is where you lost the season. Like if these go the other way, you make the play-in, and like you're going to look at these two games here and you're going to say that's the reason we made the play-in, or that's the reason we didn't make the play-in. I don't think that can be overstated how important these next two games are, Luke. But then after that, again, you've got the break, and then you got 23 games. Like that's the final stretch of the season, and we're going to see what this team is made out of. We talked on the last episode how the Magic had this awesome stretch after the All-Star break where they were just really fantastic defensively, one of the best teams in the league in terms of defensive rating. If we're going back and looking at, like, let's look at the last 15 games here. Where did the Magic rank in terms? Last 15 games, the Magic are 9th in defensive rating in the entire NBA. So you're about to get Chuma Okeke back. Jonathan Isaac, the minutes restriction just continues to kind of rise, it seems like. And this is the point of the season where the Magic should really lock in, and they should be a top 10 defensive rated team the rest of the way. And that should be good enough to you should have a chance at the play in the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean obviously that's what we hope to be the case. I just hope everybody is staying healthy and that the defensive intensity that we've seen as of late continues, and that Powell and Franz jump out of this little mini slump and we get going, because we need them quickly. And I don't know. I don't know what I expect, but I expect the defense. The one thing I do expect is that the defense stays the same or gets better, which is crazy to think about. This defense has been really great as of late. So I hope that we're involved in the play-in conversation, because I've said it before, but I think that this team could be a problem for any team in the play-in.
And according to Tankathon, the Magic have the 21st ranked remaining strength of schedule the rest of the way. You play the Spurs once, you play the Pistons twice, you play the Hornets once, you play the Pacers once, you play the Lakers. Obviously, you play the Bulls. You still have 2 games left against the Bucks, 2 against the Cavs, 1 against the Grizzlies, 2 against the Nets, which to me is going to be much more manageable than it was a couple of weeks ago with no Kyrie, no Kevin Durant, obviously. 2 more against the Heat. I mean, we've had 2 games the last couple of weeks here against the Heat. Both have been winnable games. And then 1 against the Phoenix Suns, which that's going to be pretty tough. That one's going to be in Phoenix. Going to see our boy Terrence Ross probably, but we're also going to see Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant. So let's get a couple of wins, head into the All-Star break. What do you say? And then you got 23 games here. What was it? Tim Tebow said, at the halftime, you got 30. What was it, like 30 minutes for the rest of your life?
The rest of your lives.
Yeah, like you got 23 games for the rest of your lives, at least until next September when preseason starts. So let's freaking win some games. Let's get close to the play-in. That's really what I want. And we talked about, just to go back to the trade deadline, and one of the points that we made on the last episode was this trade deadline is going to tell us all that we need to know about how this front office kind of views this team right now. And they're really in a win-win situation, I think, at this point in the season. And regardless of, I would say, what the likely outcomes are, like the likely outcomes are you missed the play-in by 5 or 6 games, or you barely missed the play-in. Like, I think that's probably what's going to happen at this point. And both are great scenarios for the Magic. Starting 5-20, missing the play-in by 5 games, good outcome in my opinion. You've got 2 rock stars in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner moving forward. You've got some other guys that you're pretty confident about. Or if you make the play-in or miss the play-in by 1 or 2 games, you're like, man, we were just right there. If you make the play-in and you make the postseason, like, you've incredibly exceeded all expectations for this season. And if you don't, you have a chance to get a high lottery pick again. We're playing with house money at this point. Like, all I want to see the rest of the way here is these guys fight and really compete. And I will be happy with probably any outcome the rest of the way here. Likely outcomes. Something crazy happens and we win like 2 games the rest of the year. Forget what I said. But I'm pretty confident that we're going to be happy at the end of this season the way that the year went.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
All right, let's go ahead and sign it off. Thanks for listening, everybody. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You guys have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!